All right, welcome back to the channel. So the Canelo Alvarez drama continues. DAZN is trying to send the case back to federal court to stick Canelo Alvarez and force him to stay with DAZN. Let's talk about let's talk about the $280 million that DAZN is going to wind up having to pay unless Canelo winds up just giving up, settling, and going back, which very well may happen. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back, welcome back. So first and foremost, I'm going to tell you why I'm talking about the Canelo Alvarez contract with DAZN and the lawsuit that's going on for anticipatory breach of contract, where Canelo Alvarez is trying to get out of his $365 million deal that he signed with DAZN a couple years ago. That DAZN is now saying that they do not want to fulfill. So the only reason that I'm talking about though is I want Canelo Alvarez to fight Jermall Charlo. I'm being very, very straightforward with it, and I'm hoping that Canelo is able to get out of this agreement so that he will be able to go to the PBC. And if he's with the PBC, I'm hoping all of these other fights let's go to heavyweight and fight somebody that we don't know or we don't care about. The 168 Rocky Fieldings, the alcoholic, indebted what's his name, Sergey Kovalev type fights, man. I'm just not interested in them. I want to see Canelo, who I really do believe is one of the best fighters in the world. And if it wasn't for his computerall thing, I would definitely have him as the pound for pound #1 guy. But he tested positive, so I can't help that. But regardless, I want to see him fight Jermall Charlo. So what is the situation with the case? Let me go through it very quickly in a way that most people will understand, okay? First things first. Papa. Oh, every time I say first things first, I think of Biggie Smalls. So first things first. Canelo said to DAZN, hey, you are going to breach my agreement. You are not giving me the fights. It doesn't seem as if you're going to be paying me the money that you said you were going to pay me. DAZN says to Canelo, you're right. We're not going to. We want to renegotiate our deal. Canelo says, I'm not interested in renegotiating your deal. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue DAZN for anticipatory breach of contract, which means that I believe that you are going to fail to meet your obligations because you told me you were going to. So I need the court to let me out of this particular agreement. So Canelo took that argument and went to a federal court. That is the United States of America, not the state of California, right? But the United States of America, which is called a federal case. In order for it to be the United States federal government to have jurisdiction over something, there has to be a couple things in place for sure. One is that it has to be over $750, and safe enough to say that, and I don't believe that it's 7,500. Actually, I always mess that up because obviously, dude, I am not a. It's $75,000. Excuse me. I always say $750. I don't know why, but it's $75,000. It has to be over $75,000, and it has to have diversity of citizenship, which means that the people that are suing each other or that are in the that are parties to the agreement have to live in separate states, right? Where you have one guy in California and one guy in New York. Well, which court should have jurisdiction? Well, that is what you call interstate commerce, because it's dealing with people in between two different states, interstate commerce, and that falls underneath the federal government, right? Because it's a conflict between two different states, and the federal government can come over and oversee those type of things. So those are basically the things that have to be proven to get it into the federal court system, right? So Canelo said, I'm suing you in federal court. DAZN said, no, you're not, because you didn't name the right people, Canelo. What do you mean you didn't name the right people? You are one step behind that. After Canelo Alvarez says, hey, I'm going to federal court, I want out of this agreement, he asked the federal court, for a summary judgment, which means, can you tell me just on one particular fact? I just need you to make a judgment on one thing. is this contract still in force or is it not? Am I free to go off and sign another contract with somebody else and negotiate for further deals? Are you going to, at the end of all this stuff, is that what's going to be the case? And can you decide that right now so that I can go make a living? Right? That's what he asked for. That's when Canelo asked for what was called a summary judgment. Then Dazn comes back and said, not so fast. Judge, we need you to throw this out because they are suing us as if we are a corporation, but we are an LLC. And I do believe that might have been Dazn. I don't know who the LLC was, whether it was Dazn or whether it was Golden Boy, who was also a party to it. But the reason that they're saying that is an issue is because if you're an LLC, you have something called members of the LLC. And that is a limited liability corporation. And what the limited liability means, just that. Your protection in an LLC is limited, which means in some circumstances that if somebody wants to sue, has an issue, or is claiming that that you've done wrong, the company has done wrong, and somebody with authority says, yes, you did it wrong, you did something wrong, and here are the damages, that you, not just the company could be liable, but in certain circumstances, the individual owners could be. And that means if you're sitting in your house and they could say, hey, you owe me money and we are going to put a lien on your house, your personal properties, which would not be the case if it was a corporation, right? Because if you are a shareholder to a corporation and somebody sues IBM, you don't get sued. They don't come saying, hey, just want to let you know that somebody sued IBM and you're a shareholder of IBM. You own exactly 0.00001% of a share. So you got to come up off of 0.00001% of the money. That's not going to happen because corporations, the investors in corporations, have full protection in a corporation, but the investors in an LLC only have limited protections, right? Or they still have limited liability. Now, why is that important? Because Canelo Alvarez then has to name the people. What happened next? Canelo says, well, I think I'll go to state court. The state of California. Goes to the state of California. Now, why would you go to the state of California? Canelo lives in California. You may feel like you don't want to name the people because that's why I got thrown out of federal court, because they wouldn't name, or got dismissed without prejudice, which means all they had to do is amend the filing, name the members of the LLCs, and put it back, and they would have moved on, and they could have gotten a decision on their summary judgment. But they decided not to do that. They decided to go down to state court. Go to state court. Then this is where we are now. Dazn says, remember that jurisdiction, that diversity of citizenship thing? We're in New York. They're in California. Not so quick. Head back to federal court. So they file what is called a notice of removal. Now, there's a difference between a notice, and a motion. Notice is affirmative, and a motion is something where you are going to provide, where you're making, well, both of them are trying to make a request. I won't go into that, but suffice it to say that that the notice of removal is, they're saying, I want this out of state court and back to federal court, where you might not necessarily know the judge, have as much influence on the local judges. The requirements, the laws are more uniform, because the federal statutes, they're trying to make, uniform judgments. Different states can have different laws, right? New York is different than California, and it could be radically different on different issues. But in the federal court, it's more uniform, and also you're going to get more of a random judge, so you may not be able to, manipulate it like you might if you're in a court that you're really familiar with the people that are there. So, that's the whole breakdown of where we got here, and I think that is, I think that's a fair narrative or explanation of where we've gotten so far. But what does it mean, dude? For me, this is what it means, man. Dazn is forcing Canelo Alvarez's hand, just like Canelo was trying to. They were forcing Dazon's hand, right? And because they are really trying to get to that summary judgment so that they can get out of this contract, right? And so the next move is going to be interesting. Is Canelo Alvarez going to go back to federal court And if he goes to back to it, first of all, I'm not sure whether or not they're going to move it back to federal court, but I have a suspicion that it's pretty obvious that it is, because if you have multiple members to their LLC, and one is like Dazn is in New York for sure, and one is in Canelo is domiciled in California, and the WBC is in Mexico. That to me just sounds like obvious diversity of citizenship. Obviously, it's over $75,000 because you're talking about $280 million. Seems like it's heading back to federal court where he's going to have to name those parties. If he names those parties and they issue the summary judgment and they allow Canelo to go, then I do believe Canelo Alvarez will probably wind up with the PBC, and hopefully that means that he will, that he'll fight Jermall Charlo. But that is pretty much where it is. DAZN put Canelo on notice. Nah. You're heading back to federal court. You're going to have to name these. And if you want this to continue and not be dismissed again, when you take it to federal court, it's going to have the right party's name to it. And I would suspect that would happen. If it gets removed to federal court, then they're going to file for a motion to dismiss because they did improperly naming the plaintiffs. And then Canelo's going to be put right back in the same situation of having to, decide whether he's going to give those up or not. But anyway, that's my take on the situation. You let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace.